Hello, everyone, and welcome back to your favorite Twitch stream, Unapologetically Uterine, right here, beautifully written. My name is Vianney Estrada. I'm here with my fabulous co host, Gail, and today we're going to be talking about something very important. So, you may or may not know that during November and December, we commemorate the 16 days of activism against gender based violence. These 16 days start from November 25th. They end today, which is December 10th. And it's these 16 days just to highlight all the ways that gender based violence affect people, especially women, and what kind of gender based violence permeates around everything we do. So it could be in our workplace, in our home life, it can be in education, and it can also be in sexual and reproductive health. So, today we want to talk about how stigma has always been a consistent hindrance for abortion access and care in different ways. Even with more awareness, there is no set date or time for when stigma can or will be rid of, and it may unfortunately never happen. However, an essential way to destigmatize is to break the silence and have these difficult conversations. In this episode, like I mentioned, we're going to talk about how stigma towards abortion shapes laws, attitudes, and puts the lives of millions around the world at risk in the form of gender based violence. So I think I discussed this a bit, but I'd like to see from your experience, Gail, or your point of view, why is the 16 days important, and why is it so significant to talk about gender based violence?
I think hi everyone. It's been a while because I wasn't on the
Yes.
last live
Oh,
stream.
but I didn't tell you. We made you in Sims. I mean, it doesn't look like you, but it was like symbolically you. So go check that out. The last live stream.
I love that. I will. I'll go check it out. But yeah. So I think gender-based violence, just like a lot of topics, is important because it's still shrouded in a lot of let's not talk about it. It's a private matter, sort of, and then it's unfortunately it has very loud impact, even though people try so much to like trivialize all the different forms of gender-based violence. It has like a very big impact. It can have an impact on the survivor. It will have an impact on the loved ones, the people around the survivor, the community around the survivor, and all that. And it's important that we create more awareness about this topic so that a lot of people who are not really in the know or who are removed from gender-based violence knows that okay, so this is something that is going on, and these are the ways that I can help. This is what I can look out for to know whether someone is being abused or someone is going through something, and these are some resources I can also recommend to help the people. So generally and basically, it's important. 16 days of activism is important because it's a great way. It's an amazing campaign to highlight gender-based violence
Mm-hmm.
and shine more light on its effects, its impact, and then how to recognize if somebody you know or just somebody you pass by needs
Mm-hmm.
assistance. Basically, yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's like the saying that what you don't talk about doesn't exist. If you don't talk about it, it's very hard to understand that it happens or how it happens. I know that a lot of people, myself included, we aren't aware that certain things are violence or gender based violence because it's so normalized that it's kind of like, oh yeah, it's a thing people do, it's a thing people say without realizing how harmful it can be. But what I would like to also discuss is stigma in the context of abortion and gender based violence. What I would mention is that stigma is very harmful. It may seem something like very small, like I mentioned, but stigma is very harmful in the sense that stigma can also affect you psychologically. So maybe you are thinking about having an abortion because you're not ready to be a mom or you never want to be a mother, you don't want to have a child. Um, and people can tell you no, like you're a bad person if you do this, you're not supposed to do this, why would you do this, look for other options. So it can cause a lot of psychological distress and make you feel confused about what options you think might be best for you. You're letting yourself be persuaded by other people who aren't taking your best interest in first place because the only person who knows what's best for you is you. But for you, Gail, what other types of stigma exist in the context of abortion and gender based violence, and how can we sort of see or understand what it is?
So first, just to describe or try to define what stigma is for people
Mm-hmm.
who don't like know how to correlate it with what we are talking about. So stigma is basically all the negative beliefs and attitudes, the discrimination, the projected shame you put on someone because they are looking to access abortion care or they are a gender-based violence survivor. So victim blaming, name calling, restricting people from accessing the resources and the help they need and all that. Even the way we talk about abortion and gender-based violence to people who are looking to access the care and then survivors who are just looking for assistance. There can be stigma in our language and all that. So for abortion and gender-based violence, just I think one main thing that stigma impact is the restriction
Mm-hmm.
because of the stigma, a lot of people have attached to abortion and gender-based violence. Like it's not normalized. I mean, we are in the process of trying to normalize it by advocacy and then doing all that we do, but still, abortion is still seen as this big bad thing in a lot of societal settings. And gender-based violence for a lot of people, it doesn't even exist. Like this is a normal thing. I mean, why are you complaining about it? Why are you talking about it? Why do we need to give a platform?
Mm-hmm.
So it's the more we talk about it, the more it gets normalized, and the more efforts can also be put in place to ensure that there are not so much restrictive laws or any restrictive laws at all. People need to be able to access this care, but because of stigma in society, in the government, amongst health providers, it can be very difficult for survivors of gender-based violence to access abortion care.
Mm-hmm.
So this is stigma, and this is one very important way that it impacts a lot of lives of survivors of gender-based violence.
Mm-hmm. And I think we can also add that statistically, people who face gender based violence in their relationships have more unintended pregnancies because of the violence that they are unfortunately enduring. And a lot of them, because of stigma, might not have that access to abortion or don't think that they can access abortion because they might think, oh, I have my partner and, it's um, a pregnancy with someone who I believe loves me, although, they are surviving this type of violence, which is never love. And then also, if they go to a healthcare provider, they're like, well, why do you want to have an abortion if you have a stable partner? If you had sex, why do you want to have this abortion? So there are these type of stigmas that can still permeate. And you mentioned something that was our next point too that we should talk about is how does stigma influence abortion restrictions? So I know a lot of people have seen that there is online discourse that's becoming very anti-choice. And this discourse is a lot about abortions and the autonomy of people and their rights. Um, I don't know. You've probably seen that, Gail, but you saw on X the trending hashtag "Your Body, My Choice." So it was absolutely disgusting. It was terrible, and that is specifically a type of gender-based violence that is very harmful and shares a lot of negative narratives because nobody should have that control over your body, or should say, I have choice over what your body wants to do or not. Um, I don't know, Gail, if you want to talk a bit more about this hashtag because I know you probably have a lot of feelings about it and would like to share your point of view.
Mhm. Yes. So just I want to talk about providers first because
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure I've mentioned this on one of our there was a situation in Ghana where someone was arrested
Mm.
by on the words of the family members of the individual who went to get an abortion
Mm-hmm.
because this person directed the girl to a place where they can access abortion, and she was arrested and beaten up by the police. for helping this person. So in a situation like this, obviously this is something that was perpetuated by stigma, because
Yeah.
in the girl's family members' mind, abortion is wrong and is bad, it's immoral, it's a sin, and then why did this person direct their beloved family member to go get abortion? So in a setting like this, for people around who see this going on, obviously they are going to remove themselves from ever wanting to assist anybody else, even if they know where help can be sought at. So that's one way that stigma influences abortion care. And for healthcare providers as well, there are times that um when people hear that a particular healthcare provider um offers abortion services or care in any form at all, whether it's counseling or advocacy or anything, which I know we both go through on my personal TikTok. I get a lot of people attacking me. So some healthcare providers can be tagged as unethical or all those things, and some of them suddenly will get the reluctance. Okay, so I don't want all this heat that is coming with me doing something that should be basic healthcare.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take a step back, or I don't want to do it anymore. That's one way stigma can affect healthcare providers, especially. And stigma is also actually rooted in a lot of cultural and religious beliefs. The framing that abortion is a sin, that abortion is immoral. This is something that comes from like societal expectations and the gender stereotype that as someone who gets pregnant, you're supposed to carry your pregnancy to term, because like that's your purpose on earth. That's how they make it seem like. So the blaming and shaming of people who get pregnant and want to seek abortion care can actually lead to um a lot of mental implications for them. So stigma influences abortion care in a lot of ways, but these are like a few ways.
And this eventually ends up hurting people through legislation, because if the stigma is big enough, then a country will say, no, this is something that we do not want to allow for our country. So we have places like the Philippines that have restricted abortion in all of its forms. You can't get abortion and under any circumstances. You have places like the United States, which slowly is restricting it more and more in each of its states, making it more difficult to access, and also perpetuating a narrative that abortion should not be allowed. And we've mentioned this in past live streams, but abortion restrictions impact a lot of people, and it impacts them differently, especially taking into account an intersectional approach. So people who are migrants, people who are undocumented, people who are part of the LGBTQ community, people who are poor, people who don't have the means to travel. A lot of moms can't take the time off to have an abortion. And it also, stigma also perpetuates a narrative that only one type of person has an abortion. So we always think about a younger woman who had an abortion, but the reality is that many people have abortions. They may have used contraception, they may have not used it, they may have been targeted in gender-based violence and sexual assault. They may be somebody who is a mother and already has a family and decided that they don't want to anymore. You know, there's a lot of factors. It might be for health reasons. Maybe the pregnancy isn't viable and the life of the pregnancy and the mother is at risk. So those are things that stigma makes us forget, that there are a lot of people who need safe abortion services. Um,
Mhm.
Now we were
I
gonna.
think,
Oh,
sorry,
sorry.
just to add up, I think when we were talking about countries, I thought of Argentina and all the efforts that like the Green Scarf movement especially has put in for advocacy, and how they got to like where they are right now, at a point where the restrictions on abortions are more liberal at this point in time for them. I think if blaming and shaming is such a thing in society, then you have less people speaking up that I need to access abortion. I need to access abortion. So let's come together. So blaming and shaming can actually affect advocacy efforts, which also means that if you are in a country where abortion is not being spoken about enough, then the restrictive laws cannot be challenged by anybody, because if it's not normalized, if people are not talking about it, if people are not coming out to say this is something that we as a group of people need, then how can a collective be built that can stand up and stand up to the government, and also stand up for like the rights, the reproductive rights of so many people. So yeah, that's it. I was just adding up to another way in which
Yeah.
stigma can affect restrictions.
Uh-huh. And something that people often forget is that all human rights are connected. So your right to reproductive and sexual health is connected to your right to a dignified human life, your right to access to education, your right to have a sustainable life where you can have the means to live and not just exist. So all these things are connected, and like you mentioned, this is a great point. A lot of people who are advocates are targets of that, and there are people who are probably pro-choice but don't say it out loud because they see how everyone is targeted and they're scared to do it, which is another way to perpetuate this gender-based violence. We were also going to discuss what is the intersection of abortions and gender based violence. And I think we mentioned a lot of good points. And one thing here that is important to also talk about is unsafe abortions. Those who face violence, who are stigmatized, who face violence when seeking abortion services, maybe they had a terrible experience at the doctor and they were subjected to violence. A lot of these people might unfortunately go and have an unsafe abortion because they feel like that's the only way they can do it without being subjected to all this violence. So in reality, gender-based violence harms abortions in many ways, but it also harms it in the sense that people might go and look for an unsafe abortion. For you, Gail, what are some other intersections between abortions and gender-based violence?
I think when I was doing my research, I saw this phrase which I really liked, reproductive coercion. So it's basically controlling a person's reproductive choice through force, manipulation, or violence. So this is actually something that is sometimes state perpetuated, because the state is deciding that um, people can't have access to abortion right to abortion care, or providers cannot give abortion care to people who need to access it, as a form of state control gender-based violence. And there's also the topic of people who can sometimes be in abusive relationships, so they are pregnancy is forced on them just to keep them more bound to the person. And then there are this is a really like passionate point for me, because it's I think it's something that happens a lot. Sabotaging contraception. So there are men, people who are in heterosexual relationships, especially, who sometimes will either switch out the birth control pills of their partners, or they will intentionally create a hole in the condoms they are using, because for them they want a certain, like they want some way to bind their partners to them. And a lot of people think pregnancy is something that does that, so people just disregard um the choice, the autonomy of the person who is actually going to carry the pregnancy to term and do what they want to do. And stigma can also restrict access for a lot of these people, which can contribute to their trauma. And if the trauma is already at an escalator point, it can make it so dangerous that in some situations, like you mentioned, people tend to go the unsafe route, which a lot of times can result in um, consequences that are irreversible, and at a very extreme death.
Yeah, yeah, that's very unfortunate. But and it's also like you mentioned, there is abortions are also very connected to access to contraception. There's two things that we fight for. But it reminded me of the term stealthing, when people make the partner think that they have, for example, a condom on, and then they take it off and they might ejaculate inside of them, and that can cause an unwanted pregnancy. And again, if she's scared because of societal stigma to go out and say, you know what, I was pregnant and I didn't want to be, I want to have an abortion, that could lead to ties that make them might feel like they have to continue the pregnancy if they don't want to.
Yes, that's true. So stalking is a form of gender-based
Mm-hmm.
violence because you're forcing a pregnancy on someone who is not aware and is probably not ready to carry a pregnancy to term either.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And those are things that, for example, at least me never. I assume you neither. I've never heard of that when I was going through sexual education. Ways that violence can
Hmm.
be perpetuated when you're thinking
Yeah.
about all this access to your sexual rights. We never hear about how gender based violence can appear. And unfortunately, it twists a narrative that many of us might have of, well, this is supposed to happen because it's normal. You know what I just thought of? That's something that's so normal that I hate when I hear it. When somebody says, when it's your first time having sex, you have to bleed. That's so dangerous. Like, you should not bleed never when you're having sex. If you bleed, is there's an issue. And like, I hear you so exasperated. So I assume you've heard this too. You hear it, and I still hear it today.
Yes. It's now unfortunately it's like a general knowledge thing.
Uh
So
huh.
people they're like people who legit shame people who have sex for the first time and do not bleed because
Mhm.
I mean purity culture and all that. So then this person is not a virgin, then you were not a virgin. I mean what are you using the virginity for in the first place? Like
Mhm.
what is it?
Mhm. Mhm.
Ugh,
And I mean, there's no equivalent for men too, so it's really unfair. There's no like, oh, you didn't bleed either, so.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah. That's
yes,
true.
these are forms of gender-based violence that are so common, like we said, in not general knowledge and the way we talk, that we don't even think about it anymore. And I like we mentioned, there's so many ways that gender-based violence can appear. Um, so now I want to ask you, how does um, how does all of this affect those who are targeted and those who are survivors of gender based violence when trying to access abortion care? I'm thinking, for example, if somebody was unfortunately sexually assaulted and they have to go to the police district to do the report, they go through so much questioning. They go through questioning by the police. They go to questioning by a psychiatrist. Then the police again. Then, if they want to press charges, they have to go see the person who perpetuated this violence against them. So they're re-victimized during this whole process, and these process can take so long that they might not even be able to access abortion in the time frame that their country gives them. I was recently reading a book. It's called Paulina's Scar in English. It's by Elena Poniatowska, and it's a journalist who basically shares the story of a 13-year-old who was unfortunately raped in her home when a burglar entered, and she had everything in her power to have that abortion. It was legal in her state because of the reason, which was rape. Um, but the first of all, the police station said, okay, you can have it, but you have to go to this hospital. At the hospital, none of the doctors wanted to perform it because of the stigma that associated with abortion. So none of the doctors performed it. So she had to go look and ask for the general director, and the director was telling her of the hospital, I can't force my staff to make you make them give you the abortion if they don't want to because they have the right to say no. And then I think it was the mayor of the county took her to the priest of the county, and the priest was telling her how it was immoral to have an abortion and she shouldn't have it. And then, it's like that poor girl went through a lot, and this is a real story. And then they went back to the hospital, and it was a public hospital, and they were waiting, and they were like right at the limit of when she could have the abortion. And basically, the director of the hospital told the mom, there's a lot of risk if she has an abortion, she could die, so it's up to you. But like, she was giving her false information. He was giving her false information and saying that the mother was putting her daughter's life at risk if she was letting her have an abortion, which is not true. If it was controlled in the hospital, she could have that abortion safely. So this poor girl went through everything, and unfortunately, she had to continue the pregnancy. She was 14 when she gave birth. There, oh, also a lot of pro-life, which we call anti-choice groups, went to the hospital and had conversations with her, telling her, no, we can give it up for adoption. You don't have to worry about that. And then after all this happened, nobody supported that girl. Not a single person who put all these
Um,
barriers helped her out. And so this book was written to showcase how difficult it is, especially in circumstances where somebody is a survivor of gender based violence, and how so many pillars of society put up these barriers for these people. Now, this is just one story in Mexico of a girl in Mexicali, but that story can be heard around the world. So that's what I thought of. It's a very unfortunate story. I don't know if you have something you want to share, Gail. I see that you're very mad with the situation, and I was so mad when I read it too.
yes, of course, because I don't know. There, I'm out of words, but I think that anti-choicers need to stop calling themselves pro-lifers
Uh huh.
because life. I don't get this idea of life just being about whatever is growing in a woman's womb. So, what about the life of the person carrying the pregnancy?
Mhm.
Is that not important? Because now they've subjected like a 13-year-old
Yeah.
to having a baby at that age, which is like in a lot of settings. I mean, the world is already so messed up.
Mhm.
Like you're starting off already as a person with a vulva
Yeah.
and boobs, and you have like a nicely shaped body or whatever, which obviously when it seems like men see it, they suddenly go crazy and want to be stupid.
Uh huh.
Sorry. And now she's also saddled with this, something she clearly did not want. And this is something that's going to make sure that whenever she looks at this baby, she's going to relive her trauma,
Yeah.
which they also never seem to think of. Because what about the mental health? What about the physical health? Because mental health can actually manifest physically when it gets to like a certain point.
Yeah.
So what about the health of this person who was forced to go through it? Which is crazy. I
Yeah. It's so hard. It's such a hard discussion to have.
uh
And here's the thing, it's hard to talk about. Imagine how hard it is to live it, which people don't understand.
yes, it's crazy because I mean, like, just look at it from the point of somebody who was sexually assaulted without like getting pregnant, like the implications of that alone on the person, and now someone is left with like a constant reminder
Yeah.
that this thing happened to me. Like, if even though it's always going to be in my head, and in different situations I'm going to relive it and replay it, now I also have an actual visual reminder that this act happened to me. Which is crazy. These people are not pro-lifers, they are anti-life and they are anti-choice. There's
Yeah.
no pro-life about the things they do.
Of course. And the thing is,
Oh,
I'm
I'm
sure.
emotional. Sorry.
No, it's fine. No, like I remember I couldn't read more than 20 pages of the book at a time because it made me so mad. Like I had to put it down. And the thing is that this girl was 13, and based on like a lot of stigma and cultural beliefs in Mexico, she probably never even had a sex talk by that age. So she probably didn't even understand what was happening other than this is wrong. And throughout the whole book, she can't. The family can't say what happened. Oh, are you? I'm so sorry, Gail. No, no, no. It's understandable. It's such a hard thing, and it's hard to talk about gender based violence, and it hurts so much because especially when you're so empathetic, you can't help but think about like what would happen in this situation. But I think that's also why we need to talk
Yeah.
about it because these things unfortunately happen, and they affect so many people worldwide. And I've seen cases in this last year in Mexico of girls who are 12, of girls who are 15, and it's not only girls. A lot of adult women too have to
Older.
survive this type of
Hmm.
violence and have to make the difficult decision if they want to continue the pregnancy or not. And they face so many barriers that won't even allow them that justice after all the trauma they've been to. Hmm. No, it's fine. I
I
think If there's an episode we should be crying at, it's this one because of how hard it is.
Yeah, I like gender-based violence, especially like I know it's gender,
Uh
so
huh.
it's combining. But I'm sorry, when it comes to it, sometimes I get very um like very focused on centered on what's like as people living as women,
Mm-hmm.
especially like go through at the hands of like
Yeah.
the male gender.
Yeah.
So
And the thing is
and it's
that.
crazy because
Mm-hmm.
I have personal stories and I've heard personal stories like from people around me, and I don't think it's ever going to stop for us, like for us people who identify as
Uh
women.
huh.
It feels like it's something that we are going to go through like our whole lives till you don't exist anymore, because there's no safe space
Mm-hmm.
basically. Like as long as you're in a space with other men, you have to be watching your back, you have to be watching what you say, you have to be watching what they say, so that you can pick up on cues. Like you
Yeah.
always need to be alert to be sure that someone is not going to get you in like a compromising situation. And it doesn't even work because sometimes like all these things being put out that as a woman you should do this, you should do this to avoid this. Like I get
Mm-hmm.
it. There are ways to keep ourselves safe and whatever. But it also makes it so damn difficult because now it feels like it's my responsibility not to be assaulted or abused
Mm-hmm.
by like someone. Like I'm just literally living. I'm not doing anything else. But suddenly I need to add it to my list of to
Yeah.
do, that when I'm stepping out of the house, I need to look a certain way so that I do not attract attention. I need to speak a certain way so that I do not
No. Yeah. I understand. No, and I think a lot of women can relate. I personally, I think like obviously we all have this trauma. I remember the first time I was inappropriately touched on the street. I was 14. So it happens to a lot of girls. One thing I say, which makes me sad, is that the older I get, the less harassment I experience on the street. But it's not because it's gotten better. It's because I'm not a girl anymore. I can defend
do you know
myself.
how scary that is actually?
Mhm. Mhm. It's
That,
so
that's
sad.
that's even scarier
Yeah.
because so there are so many little girls, and it also goes to show how crude a lot of men are, and they are just pedophiles honestly, because it's just the attraction that comes with I can easily overpower this
Mhm.
person and they can't do anything about it. That fuels a lot of the things that they do and say. And I am so sorry for all girls and all women,
Mhm.
honestly. Like we deserve so much better.
Yeah. And I think this is why it's also important to see how we can dismantle the stigma for men too, because we
Mhm.
need to go to the root of the problem. What societal thinking or what religious thinking or what ways that we perceive the world are making men feel like they have to do this thing to prove their masculinity. And it comes a lot tied into sex, you know? You have to have sex, you have to do this, you have to have children, and that's exactly why a lot of unwanted pregnancies go through and they become,
Yeah.
child. It's a lot of why people feel like they need to sexually assault people or they have to do it when like they don't. So stigma affects a lot of people. We focus on women because unfortunately women are the most targeted. But if we really want to dismantle stigma and dismantle this gender based violence, we need to go to the root of the problem and understand what ways of thinking are perpetuating this violence. So I think that
Mhm.
we to kind of
True.
move forward and I really like thinking of ways to help out. I want to ask you, Gail, what are some ways we can dismantle stigma as advocates? Um, how can we dismantle the stigma for the average person?
Mm, I think you literally already just said some about sort of starting from the root cause of it, which also means that we have to put out fact-based information,
Uh-huh.
create fact-based campaigns. So when we are educating, when we are creating awareness, you need to make sure that you're not sensationalizing it. I mean, this is a very like emotional and passionate topic.
Yeah.
So maybe for someone like me, which I literally just almost cried on this live stream. But if you are working on a campaign of that capacity, your emotionalism can tend to seep through,
Yeah.
which is not okay. Which is okay. It's not like a bad thing.
Uh-huh.
You just need to find a way to make sure that you're not making it about you,
Yeah.
and then you're basing every information you're putting out on fact, so that when people see it, they know that, oh, okay, this person knows what they are talking about. Okay, this is believable because I can go to the source, I can go here, I can check this out, and then, oh, it checks out. Now this is something I can actually sit and sort of think on, because unfortunately women, we've also been branded as emotional by men. So sometimes when you see a woman just ranting about these situations, you get a lot of men making comments like, oh, like, oh, this is not a big deal, she's just,
Uh-huh.
maybe it's her time of month, maybe this, maybe that, or she's just being a woman, or she's just a girl. But like, we need to find ways to mix like this thing that men have weaponized as a weakness with what is supposed to be done, which is our fact-based campaign.
Yeah.
And also that we should create safe spaces for survivors of gender-based violence. We need to empower and be allies for like these people, because obviously there's a culture of them not being listened to. Like, they usually do not have a voice. So as advocates, we
Yeah.
need to make sure that we are creating a space where they are comfortable enough to speak on the things they are experiencing, and where they can seek out resources. And I especially love that Safe to Choose has a section where you can go and tell your abortion story. You
Yeah.
can also reach out to any of the counselors, and you can tell them either about your abortion story, or an abusive situation you are in, just anything at all. They are here to support you. And lastly, as advocates, we also need to be very mindful of the language we use
Yeah.
when we are talking about abortion and talking about gender based violence, so that we don't further victimize survivors and all the individuals who are seeking to access care. We should be inclusive with our language. Just like you mentioned, I was emotional earlier. So I singled out that even though gender-based violence like happens to everyone, I am particularly focused
Yeah.
on women, which is a personal thing. But from coming from an advocate's point of view, um, I will have to look at all angles, and also look at all the people who are at risk of gender-based violence, which includes individuals in the LGBTQ community as
Yeah.
well. So these are some ways that we as advocates can help to destigmatize abortion and also gender-based violence.
Yeah. And I would add, and this is also for myself, is that we need to do a better job at connecting because, like we mentioned, everything is connected. So, abortions and gender based violence and sex ed, human rights, everything is connected. So, as advocates, it's very helpful if we as people have um, resources we can direct people to and be like, you know what, thank you for sharing your story with me. I know exactly who you can go to. This is great. Because from personal experiences, when I've done events, I did a particular event for providing abortion information in person. And, you know, it's a different space. A lot of people don't provide abortion information, in the wild. And a woman came up to me and she was like, you know what, my daughter is going through a violent relationship and I don't know what to do. I know the information you're giving isn't the same, but I feel like I can trust you and ask you on what to do. And it just shows you that giving people the safe space and showing them that you can talk about the difficult things, regardless if it's exactly that or not, uh, it's just a great thing. I think a lot of people have a lot of trauma related to gender based violence, and it's always nice to give them a space to talk about it. But exactly referring to this, I wanted to ask you, Gil. Do you know of some resources that we can direct people to if they're looking for help? Anything that they could contact or see for support?
So I'm definitely going to suggest Safe to Choose because I just spoke about Safe to Choose. So I think one way that abortion stigma is perpetuated is the suppression of fact-based
Yeah.
information. So there's a lot of misinformation out there, and I feel like when people have access to accurate and reliable information, it can go a long way in destigmatizing abortions and even how they can also educate and talk to other people about abortion stigma. So, Stacey has a lot of information how to use abortion pill as well. And I know off the top of my head, I can also vouch for Women on Web
Hmm.
as well if you need information on abortion access and abortion care. Maybe you can share more resources for people looking to access support for gender-based violence.
Yeah, I think the main thing there is that it's very localized. So, depending on the country you're in and the city you're in, you're going to find information. What I honestly would suggest is to Google and check out there's a lot of hotlines. So, I don't want to recommend one thing because it really depends on the region, but there's a lot of hotlines. There's a lot of local organizations and collectives that provide this information and these resources. And again, I think if you are having a struggle with some gender based violence issues, you can always contact out counselors. They are very connected with a lot of organizations, so they're more than likely will be able to direct you to somebody for help. And just to end this live stream on a bit of a lighter note, what are some encouraging words you would give to the survivors of gender based violence, Gail?
Hi, my sweet, strong, and resilient women. Because I'm sorry, I'm talking to women right now. I'm talking to women right now. I I know how difficult it can be. I won't act as if I understand what anybody who has been a survivor, who is a survivor of gender-based violence, or anyone who's trying to seek abortion care is experiencing. I won't try to understand, but I can empathize, I can sympathize coming from a point of view of a woman. And I need you to know that no matter how you feel, and no matter what the people around you are making you feel, or the things they are saying to you, you are not alone. You are never alone. There are so many resources that will be with you through your journey. They will be with you throughout. So just find ways to get to these resources and never forget that you are not alone. You
Mm-hmm.
have a voice. We hear you, we see you, and even though you don't feel like it right now, you are doing so amazing. And we are proud of you for enduring what you are going through. And it's never your fault. I know sometimes it can really feel like it, but it was and it is and it will never be your fault for whatever it is you are going through. And I hope you remember that how to use safe to choose especially are here to support you in all the ways that we can. You
Mm-hmm.
are very much loved.
I think you said it best, Gail. I think that there's nothing else I could say that could be any better than your message. Um, I would just say that, you know, we focus on this because of the 16 days of activism, but help is there year round. You are not alone.
Mhm.
There's always someone who will listen to your story, who believes you, who is by your side, who is on your side. Um, and that I hope that we can eventually eradicate gender based violence. I don't think it's impossible, I think it's very hard. But I think if we really fight against stigma and against these cultural norms that perpetuate violence, it might happen. And again, just to share our resources. If you're going through an unwanted pregnancy, whether it be because of gender-based violence or just a personal decision, regardless, you can go to howtouseabortionpill.org or safetochoose.org. Both of them have great resources that will help you have a safe abortion. If you want something a bit more talk to a human, you could go to Safe to Choose. We have counselors. If you feel more comfortable in that moment talking to Ali, the chatbot, because you don't want to interact with somebody else, you can do that. That's also perfectly valid. And I just hope that everyone feels like they are supported and never feels alone. That's what I think I would really love for everyone to feel supported. Anything else we need to share, Gail? Any other resources? Anything else?
I think that's it for now. If you are a health provider who comes across this live stream, I also want you to know that we have resources on how to use abortionpill.org for medical providers on how you can provide abortion care for someone who is looking to self-manage their abortions. This is certified. It's a FIGO certified course, and it's also free, very interactive, and you can finish the whole course at your own pace. So if you or you know someone who is a healthcare provider, they can head over to our website and start this course as soon as they can.
Hmm. That's great. No, no, no. That's perfect. And I think that yeah, again, we have all these resources, so much love and empathy, and I just hope
Mhm.
everyone has a really great week. It's almost the end of the year, and I think it's also our last
Oh,
live
and
stream. Oh, sorry, you were gonna say
yes,
something?
I just wanted to add, so you can also seek out
Oh,
Micah for anything contraception related, because we spoke about it earlier, how people sabotage contraception and all that. So if you are looking to combine methods, or you are just in a situation where you feel like I don't want to be pregnant, and you even want to sneak and get a contraceptive, but you're not sure what to get, you can
yeah,
head over to findmymethod.org and start a chat with Micah, and Micah can help you decide which contraceptive will best suit your lifestyle and all that. Yeah,
yeah.
I'm done.
No, that's perfect.
No more yapping.
Well, thank you, Gail. And thank you to everyone who is watching right now. And I think, like I mentioned, this is probably our last live stream for the year. So it's a very
Yes.
powerful one, but it's an important one. So I wish everyone has a really great year. And again, we are always here for you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye, guys.